You'd assume falling 6 miles out of the sky with no parachute means you're already dead before you land. In 1972, one woman proved that assumption wrong, and the way she survived is stranger than the fall itself. Her name was Vesna Vulović. She was 22 years old, working as a flight attendant on JT Flight 367, flying over Czechoslovakia on a routine route she'd flown dozens of times before. 20 minutes into the flight, a bomb hidden in the cargo hold detonated, and the plane broke apart in midair at 33,330 feet. That's over 6 miles above the ground. Everyone else on board died instantly or in the fall. Vulović fell the entire distance, still strapped into a section of the fuselage, and landed on a snow-covered, sharply inclined hillside in the Czech countryside. She was the only survivor. She holds the Guinness World Record for surviving the highest fall without a parachute in recorded history. And here's the detail that should stop you cold. Within days of waking up in the hospital, doctors found her memory of the entire event was completely gone. But her body had absorbed an impact that should have ended her several times over before she ever touched the ground. To understand how strange this really is, you have to understand what a fall from that height actually does to a human body. At 33,000 feet, the air is thin enough that you'd lose consciousness from lack of oxygen within seconds if you weren't already unconscious from the blast. The temperature at that altitude sits around -50 degrees Celsius, and during the fall itself, a human body reaches terminal velocity, roughly 120 miles per hour, well before it ever gets close to the ground. Hitting solid Earth at that speed produces forces that are, for almost every practical purpose, unsurvivable. This isn't a rare bad outcome. It is the expected outcome every single time, without exception, in nearly every other documented case of a fall from that height. So when investigators started reconstructing exactly how Vulović lived, they didn't find one clean answer. They found a chain of coincidences so specific that if you'd written it as fiction, no one would have believed it. The section of fuselage she was still attached to acted like an accidental parachute of sorts, catching air resistance as it tumbled and slowing its descent more than a body falling freely would have. The hillside she landed on was covered in a thick layer of snow, and it was steep enough that her body likely continued sliding after impact instead of stopping dead on contact, spreading the force of the landing out over a longer distance instead of absorbing it all at once. A local farmer named Bruno Honka, who happened to live nearby and had first aid training from his time as a medic during the war, found her within minutes and kept her alive with those exact skills until an ambulance could reach the remote hillside. Remove any one of those factors, and there is no survivor story. No fuselage section acting as a partial parachute. No snow. No specific incline. No man with the right training happening to be close enough to reach her in time. Every single piece had to align, in the right order, in the right place, for this to end any other way than the way it ended for everyone else on that plane. And here's where the story gets more uncomfortable than the miracle framing usually allows. For decades, the official account was treated as settled. Vesna Vulović, the flight attendant who fell 6 miles and lived. But investigative journalists later revisited the case and found inconsistencies that never quite added up. Some evidence suggested the plane may not have broken apart at the reported altitude at all, that the actual fall may have been from a significantly lower height, closer to what a small number of other extreme altitude survivors have experienced. Interviews conducted decades later suggested even Vulović herself had doubts about parts of the official story, doubts that were never fully resolved before her death in 2016. This detail matters, not because it makes her survival less remarkable, but because of what it reveals about how we build stories around the unexplainable. A woman falling from 6 miles up and living is almost too clean a narrative. It fits the shape of a miracle so precisely that almost nobody who told the story afterward, reporters, record keepers, even the airline itself, had much incentive to complicate it with uncertainty. The record book wanted a number, the public wanted a miracle, and the actual, messier truth that this may have been an extraordinary but explainable survival, rather than a physics-defying one, was less interesting to nearly everyone involved than the version that made her sound like she'd beaten death itself outright. That tension sits at the center of almost every impossible survival story you've ever heard. We are drawn to the version where the laws that govern everyone else simply didn't apply to one person. It feels better than the alternative, which is that a dozen mundane, coincidental factors happen to line up in someone's favor, and none of us would have the same luck. Vulović herself never fully embraced the miracle narrative either. In interviews given later in life, she described feeling more haunted than blessed by what had happened to her, carrying both physical injuries that affected her for the rest of her life, and a strange, unresolved guilt about being the only one who walked away. She spent much of her later life as a vocal critic of the government that once celebrated her as a national hero, a detail almost never mentioned in the retellings that reduce her to a single astonishing statistic. Because that's the part the record books can't capture. A number, 33,330 feet, tells you almost nothing about what it's actually like to be the only person a plane full of people leaves behind. It doesn't tell you about the years of surgeries, the disputed details she had to live with being questioned about for the rest of her life, or the fact that surviving the fall was, in some ways, the beginning of an entirely different kind of ordeal, rather than the end of one. We like our survival stories clean. One person, one impossible fall, one triumphant landing. But real survival is almost never that simple. It's usually a tangle of luck, timing, other people's small decisions, and a body that happened to be positioned in exactly the right configuration at exactly the right moment. Vulović didn't beat physics. She got caught inside a rare configuration of it that happened to leave her alive, and then had to spend the rest of her life being the answer to a question everyone else wanted to reduce to a single unbelievable number. You'd assume falling 6 miles with no parachute means you're already dead before you land. For one woman, that assumption turned out to be wrong, but not because she was superhuman. It was wrong because reality, every once in an almost unimaginably rare while, leaves a gap just wide enough for one person to fall straight through it and land, somehow, still breathing on the other side.